The rain pattered against the windows of Finnley Ross's coffee shop, creating a soothing rhythm that contrasted with the chaos of her morning. 3 baristas had called in sick, the milk delivery was late, and now the espresso machine was making a concerning grinding noise. Yet somehow, as she glanced up from wiping down the counter, she noticed him, a man in a crisp gray suit, sitting alone by the window, staring at his watch with increasing agitation. Finnley had never been one to ignore a person in distress. Her grandmother had always said kindness was free, and today, despite everything going wrong, she could spare a little. Grabbing a freshly brewed cup of their signature dark roast, she made her way across the busy floor. "You look like you could use this," she said, placing the steaming cup on the table in front of him. "On the house." The man looked up, surprise evident in his dark eyes. For a moment he seemed unsure how to respond. Up close, Finnley could see the tension in his jaw, the slight dishevelment of his otherwise perfect hair, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. "Thank you," he finally said, his voice deeper than she expected. "That's unexpectedly kind." "The roasted bean believes in coffee karma," Finnley replied with a smile. "You look like you've been waiting a while." He checked his watch again. 47 minutes to be exact. I had an appointment that was apparently not as important to the other party as it was to me. "Their loss," Finnley said with a shrug. "Enjoy the coffee. It might not solve your problems, but it might make them more bearable." As she turned to leave, he called after her, "Wait, what's your name?" "Finnley," she replied over her shoulder. "Finnley Ross." "Thank you, Finnley Ross." "I'm Carter Quinlan." The name didn't register with her as she hurried back to the counter where a line was forming. Just another suited businessman having a rough day, she thought, already mentally moving on to the next crisis of her morning. Carter watched her walk away, taking a sip of the coffee she'd brought him. It was excellent, rich, and complex without being bitter. Just like its provider, he mused. In his world of high-stakes pharmaceutical development, spontaneous kindness was rare. As the CEO of Quinlan Pharmaceuticals, people typically approached him wanting something: funding, jobs, connections. This woman had approached him wanting nothing at all. He took another sip, contemplating the meeting that wasn't going to happen. The potential investors who'd stood him up were going to regret missing this opportunity. His company's breakthrough arthritis medication was going to revolutionize pain management without the addictive qualities of opioids. Their loss, as the coffee shop owner had said. When his phone rang, Carter answered it without checking the display. "Quinlan." "Sir, I've been trying to reach you," his assistant's voice came through. "The Montgomery team had a car accident on their way to meet you. Nothing serious, but they won't be making it today." Carter's annoyance immediately shifted to concern. "Is everyone all right?" "Yes, just shaken up. They're asking to reschedule for next week." "Of course," Carter replied, feeling a twinge of guilt for his earlier frustration. "Set it up and send them flowers." As he ended the call, his gaze drifted back to Finnley, who was now behind the counter, efficiently making drinks while simultaneously directing what appeared to be a new employee. There was something captivating about her, the way she moved with purpose, her genuine smile as she handed customers their orders, the streak of what looked like flour on her cheek. Without fully understanding why, Carter settled in to work from the coffee shop instead of returning to his office. He pulled out his laptop, responding to emails and reviewing reports, but his attention kept drifting to the counter. To her, 2 hours later, as the morning rush subsided, Finnley approached his table again. "Refill," she offered, holding a fresh pot of coffee. "Please," Carter said, closing his laptop. "This place makes it hard to leave." "That's the goal," she laughed, filling his cup. "Though most people don't stay quite this long after being stood up. The meeting's been rescheduled," he explained. "And your coffee is better than what we have at the office." High praise. "What office is that?" Carter hesitated. Usually when he mentioned Quinlan Pharmaceuticals, people's demeanor changed. They became either overtly impressed or calculatingly interested. He enjoyed this simple interaction too much to risk changing it. Just a small company downtown, he said vaguely. Nothing exciting. All companies are exciting to someone, Finnley replied. Even this coffee shop keeps me up at night, and not just because of the caffeine, Carter smiled. How long have you owned it? 3 years now. It was my grandmother's before that. She left it to me when she passed away. I'm sorry for your loss, Carter said genuinely. Thank you. She lived a full life, taught me everything I know about coffee and people. Finnley's eyes softened with memory. She always said you can tell a lot about people by how they take their coffee. You drink yours black, straightforward, no nonsense. And accurate, Carter admitted. What about you? 1 sugar splash of cream. Sweet, but not overpowering, with just enough complexity to keep things interesting, she replied with a wink. Carter found himself laughing a real laugh, something that had become increasingly rare in his life of board meetings and clinical trials. I think your grandmother was onto something. A customer called from the counter, and Finnley gave him an apologetic smile. Duty calls. Stay as long as you like, Carter. The way she said his name sent an unexpected warmth through him. As she walked away, Carter realized he'd just had the most genuine conversation he'd experienced in months, and with a complete stranger no less. The next day, Carter found himself returning to the roasted bean, telling himself it was just for the excellent coffee. He arrived earlier this time, joining the morning rush. When he reached the counter, Finnley looked up from the espresso machine she was operating and smiled in recognition. The stood-up businessman returns, she said, her eyes twinkling. Black coffee, am I that predictable? He asked. In the best way, she assured him, grabbing a large cup. Taking it to go today, actually. I thought I'd stay and work here again if that's all right. The ambience is conducive to productivity. Finnley raised an eyebrow. The ambience of milk steamers and sleep-deprived college students. Precisely, he replied with a smile. Beats the sterile silence of my office. Well, the same table is open, she said, handing him his coffee. Good luck with your productivity. Carter made his way to the window table, setting up his laptop. The truth was, his office had an exceptional view of the city skyline, a personal barista, and complete silence when he wanted it. What it didn't have was Finnley Ross. Over the next 2 weeks, Carter established a routine. He'd arrive at the roasted bean each morning, work for a few hours, and engage in brief conversations with Finnley whenever she had a moment. He learned that she had graduated with a business degree but found corporate life unfulfilling. He discovered she lived in an apartment above the coffee shop with a one-eyed cat named Professor Beans. He found out she volunteered teaching financial literacy at the local community center on weekends. What he didn't tell her was that he was worth millions. That the small company downtown was actually a pharmaceutical giant employing over 5,000 people. That the meeting he'd been waiting for that first day was about a potential billion-dollar deal. For the first time in years, Carter was just himself, not the CEO, not the pharmaceutical wonderkind who'd revolutionized diabetes treatment in his 20s, not the eligible bachelor regularly featured in the city's business magazines. Just Carter, a man who enjoyed black coffee and the company of a spirited coffee shop owner. On a particularly busy Friday morning, Carter arrived to find the roasted bean in chaos. A burst pipe had flooded part of the kitchen, and Finnley was simultaneously directing a plumber, calming an upset customer, and trying to salvage what she could from the water-damaged storeroom. Carter, she called when she saw him, relief evident in her face. I hate to ask, but could you possibly watch the front for literally 2 minutes while I deal with this plumber? Jenny called in sick again, and say no more, Carter said, setting down his briefcase and removing his suit jacket. What do I need to know? Just take orders and payments. The iPad system is simple. Don't try to make anything, she added with alarm as he rounded the counter. I'll be right back. I've got this, he assured her, rolling up his sleeves. Go. As Finnley disappeared into the back, Carter turned to face the small line of waiting customers. Good morning, he said with newfound authority. Who's next? 20 minutes later, Finnley returned to find Carter efficiently taking orders and payments, having organized a system where customers placed their orders with him, and then moved down the counter to wait for her to prepare them. "You're a lifesaver," she said, quickly taking over the drink preparation. "I didn't expect you to handle it so well." "I'm good at organizing people," he said modestly. "It's part of my job." "What exactly is your job?" she asked, steaming milk with practiced precision. "You've never really said." Carter hesitated. "I'm in management," he said finally. "Pharmaceutical industry." "Ah, that explains the suits," Finnley nodded, "and the air of someone who's used to being in charge." "Do I have an air?" he asked, amused. "Definitely, it's not a bad air," she clarified quickly. "Just confident. Like you know what you're doing even when you're taking coffee orders." The morning rush eventually subsided, and the plumber announced the pipe was fixed. Carter helped Finnley mop up the remaining water and reorganize the supplies that had been hastily moved during the emergency. "I can't thank you enough," she said as they finished. "You saved my morning." "Happy to help," Carter replied, acutely aware of their proximity in the small storeroom. "That's what friends are for, right? Is that what we are, friends?" Finnley asked, looking up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I'd like to think so," Carter said carefully. "Unless you have a different definition for person who comes to your coffee shop every day and helps clean up water damage." Finnley laughed. "No, that pretty much falls under the friendship category." She paused, seeming to debate something internally. "Friends have dinner together sometimes, don't they?" Carter's heart rate quickened. "They absolutely do." "Well, I happen to be an excellent cook, and I happen to be free tomorrow night." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in an uncharacteristically shy gesture. "If you're interested, I'm interested," Carter said, perhaps too quickly. "Very interested." "Great," she smiled. 7 o'clock, I live upstairs, so." "I remember," Carter nodded. 7 it is." As he left the coffee shop that day, Carter felt lighter than he had in years. But along with that lightness came a growing weight, the knowledge that he wasn't being entirely honest with Finnley. The longer he waited to tell her who he really was, the more difficult it would become. He spent Saturday alternating between anticipation and anxiety. At precisely 7 o'clock, he arrived at the side entrance to Finnley's apartment, bearing a bottle of wine and a bouquet of wildflowers. Finnley opened the door, and Carter momentarily lost his ability to speak. Gone was the coffee shop owner in her practical attire and apron. Instead, she wore a simple blue dress that complemented her eyes, her hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. "You look," Carter began, searching for a word that wouldn't sound trite. "Clean," Finnley supplied with a laugh. "Amazing what washing off the coffee grounds can do." She accepted the flowers with genuine delight. "These are beautiful." "Come in." Her apartment was exactly as Carter had imagined, warm, eclectic, and filled with personality. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with an assortment of novels, business books, and cookbooks. A large window offered a view of the street below, and the promised one-eyed cat was perched on a cushioned window seat, regarding Carter with suspicion. "That's Professor Beans," Finnley said, following his gaze. "Don't take it personally, he's suspicious of everyone at first." "A quality I respect in a cat," Carter replied. "Something smells amazing." "Coq au vin," she said, heading to the kitchen. "My grandmother's recipe, I hope you're hungry." "Starving," Carter admitted, following her. "Can I help with anything?" "You can open that wine," she suggested, pointing to a drawer. "Corkscrews in there." As Carter opened the wine, Finnley put the finishing touches on their meal. The kitchen was small but efficient, clearly the domain of someone who enjoyed cooking. They moved around each other with surprising ease, as if they'd done this many times before. Over dinner, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Carter found himself sharing stories about his childhood, his passion for medicine that had driven his career choices, even his fears and doubts, though carefully edited to avoid revealing his true position. Finnley was equally open, telling him about her dreams for expanding the roasted bean, her close relationship with her late grandmother, and her failed attempt at corporate life, before finding her true calling. I lasted exactly 8 months in a marketing firm, she confessed over dessert. My boss kept telling me I needed to be more strategic and less emotionally invested in our clients. Some of the best business decisions I've seen were made because someone was emotionally invested, Carter countered. Passion drives innovation. Exactly, Finnley exclaimed. But try telling that to someone who measures success purely in quarterly projections. Carter winced inwardly, thinking of his own board meetings. Not all corporate types are like that, he said softly. Present company excluded, of course, she smiled, raising her wine glass. To the rare businessman with a heart. As the evening progressed, they moved to her small living room, the conversation growing more personal. Carter found himself sharing things he rarely discussed: his parents' expectations, the pressure he felt to always succeed, his occasional loneliness despite being surrounded by people. It sounds like you need more moments like this, Finnley said, her eyes reflecting the soft lamplight. Real connections. I think you might be right, Carter agreed, acutely aware of how close they were sitting on her sofa when their eyes met. The air between them changed, charged with something neither had acknowledged until now. Carter leaned forward slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. Instead, Finnley closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that started gently but quickly deepened. Carter's hand moved to cup her cheek, feeling her soft skin beneath his fingers. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. I've been wanting to do that since you brought me coffee that first day, Carter admitted. Really. I was still considering whether you might be a corporate spy sent to steal my grandmother's secret recipes, Finnley teased, but her eyes were serious as she added, I'm glad you came back. So am I, Carter said, pulling her closer for another kiss. The evening extended into the night as they talked, laughed, and shared more kisses. It was nearly midnight when Carter reluctantly announced he should leave. I had an amazing time, he said at her door. Can I see you again, outside the coffee shop, I mean? I'd be disappointed if you didn't ask, Finnley replied. Tomorrow's Sunday, the shop's closed. Maybe we could do something then. It's a date, Carter agreed, leaning in for one final kiss before forcing himself to leave. As he drove home to his penthouse apartment, the disparity between his life and the one he'd been presenting to Finnley weighed heavily on him. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would tell her everything. Sunday dawned bright and clear. Carter picked Finnley up in what he called his weekend car, a modest sedan rather than the luxury vehicle he typically drove, and they spent the day exploring a nearby botanical garden, followed by lunch at a small cafe. As they walked through a secluded rose garden, Carter knew it was time. Finnley, there's something I need to tell you, she looked at him curiously. That sounds serious. It's not bad, at least. I hope you won't think it is. Carter took a deep breath. I haven't been completely honest about my job. You're not in pharmaceuticals, she asked, frowning slightly. I am, but... He hesitated. I'm not just in management, I'm the CEO of Quinlan Pharmaceuticals. Finnley stopped walking, her expression unreadable. Quinlan Pharmaceuticals, the company that makes life glucose, yes, among other medications, Carter finished for her. I founded the company 12 years ago. You're that Carter Quinlan, Finnley said slowly. The one who's on the cover of Business Weekly every other month, Carter nodded, watching her carefully. I should have told you sooner, I just enjoyed being seen as a regular person for once. Finnley was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. So all those times you were working in my coffee shop. I was running a multinational corporation from your window table, yes, Carter admitted. My assistant thinks I've lost my mind. To his surprise, Finnley started to laugh. No wonder you were so good at organizing that order system on Friday. You probably manage thousands of people. 5,327 as of last quarter, Carter confirmed, relief washing over him at her reaction. You're not angry, should I be? She asked, genuinely curious. You didn't lie about who you are as a person, just your job title. Most people treat me differently when they know, Carter explained. They want something: money, connections, investments, or they assume I'm arrogant, cutthroat. Are you? Finnley challenged. Arrogant and cutthroat, in business, sometimes I have to be decisive in ways that might seem harsh, he admitted. But I try to remain ethical, to remember why I started the company: to help people. Finnley considered this. The man I've gotten to know over these past weeks is kind, thoughtful, and surprisingly willing to mop floors during a plumbing emergency. That's the real you, CEO title or not. Carter felt a weight lift from his shoulders. So we're okay. We're okay, she confirmed, taking his hand again as they resumed walking. Though I'm now incredibly embarrassed about my tiny apartment and simple dinner last night. Don't be, Carter said earnestly. It was the best evening I've had in years. Your apartment feels like a home. Mine's just a place I sleep. Their conversation shifted as Finnley asked questions about his company, genuinely interested in his work developing affordable medications. Carter found himself speaking passionately about his research goals and the foundation he'd established to provide medications to underserved communities. As evening approached, they found themselves sitting on a park bench, watching the sunset. Thank you for today, Finnley said, leaning against his shoulder, for trusting me with the truth. Thank you for not running away when you found out, Carter replied, wrapping an arm around her. Though I wouldn't blame you if you did. Dating a CEO comes with complications. Are we dating? Finnley asked with a smile. That's presumptuous, Mr. Quinlan. My mistake, Carter said solemnly. Would you, Finnley Ross, consider dating me despite my complicated life and occasional appearance in business magazines? I'll consider it, she teased, then grew serious. But I need you to know I don't care about your money or your title. The coffee shop is my life. I'm not looking to be a corporate wife or socialite. I would never ask you to be anything other than exactly who you are, Carter assured her. That's the person I'm falling for. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of discovery as their two very different worlds began to merge. Carter continued to work from the roasted beans several mornings a week, though now Finnley understood why his phone rarely stopped buzzing. She met his executive team when they finally gave up trying to lure him back to headquarters, and instead came to the coffee shop for their meeting, much to the excitement of the other patrons. In turn, Carter rolled up his sleeves and learned how to operate the espresso machine during a particularly busy Saturday. He attended community center fundraisers with Finnley, impressed by her dedication to financial education programs. He even gained the trust of Professor Beans, who eventually deigned to sleep on his lap during movie nights at Finnley's apartment. Their relationship wasn't without challenges. Carter's schedule sometimes required last-minute cancellations, and the press eventually caught wind of his regular appearances at a modest coffee shop, leading to a brief flurry of unwanted attention for Finnley. But through it all, they communicated honestly, finding compromises that worked for both of them. 6 months after that first cup of coffee, Carter was helping Finnley close the shop when he noticed her frowning at the accounting software on her laptop. Problem? He asked, finishing the last of the dishes. Just running the numbers on that second location I've been considering, she sighed. The space is perfect, but the startup costs are daunting. Carter dried his hands and came to look over her shoulder. Have you considered bringing in a partner? Someone who believes in your vision. Like who? Finnley asked, leaning back to look at him. Most investors would want to change everything about what makes the roasted bean special. What about me? Carter suggested. Silent partner, of course, no corporate interference. Finnley's expression grew careful. Carter, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want our relationship and business to get complicated. Fair enough, he nodded, respecting her independence. But consider this, I drink enough coffee here to practically be a shareholder already. It would be a sound investment. I'll think about it, she promised. Thank you for offering. As they finished closing, Carter felt a nervous energy he hadn't experienced since his first pharmaceutical pitch. When Finnley finally locked the door, he took her hand. "I have something to show you," he said, leading her out to where his car was parked. "If it's your company's quarterly reports, I'm going to need more coffee," she joked. "Even better than financial documents," Carter promised, opening the passenger door for her. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a stately older home in one of the city's historic neighborhoods. "Whose house is this?" Finnley asked as Carter parked in the driveway. "No one's at the moment," he said, retrieving a key from his pocket. "It's for sale. I thought we could look at it." Finnley gave him a puzzled look as they walked to the front door. "Are you thinking of moving?" "I'm thinking of making a home," Carter corrected, unlocking the door. "Something I've never really had before." The house was beautiful inside: high ceilings, wood floors, large windows that flooded the rooms with the last of the evening light. Carter watched Finnley's expression as she wandered through the space, taking it all in. "There's a study that would be perfect for when I need to work from home," he explained, following her. "And the kitchen is amazing, plenty of space for your grandmother's recipes." Finnley turned to him slowly, realization dawning in her eyes. "Carter, are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking for more than that," he said softly, taking both her hands in his. "I'm asking if you can imagine building a life with me in a place that would be ours, not just mine or yours. Are you proposing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Carter smiled. "Not quite yet. I know better than to rush you, but I am proposing a future one where I help you open as many coffee shops as you want, and you help me remember there's more to life than quarterly reports." Tears shimmered in Finnley's eyes. "I can imagine that," she said, squeezing his hands. "I can definitely imagine that." "Good," Carter said, pulling her into his arms, "because I've never been more certain of anything in my life." As they stood in the empty house that held so much potential, Carter marveled at how his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a CEO whose greatest passion was his work. Now, he understood there were more important things, like the woman in his arms who had offered coffee to a stranger and changed his life forever. 1 year to the day after their first meeting, Carter returned to the Roasted Bean early in the morning before it opened. With Finnley's staff as accomplices, he recreated the scene of their first encounter. He sat alone at the window table, checking his watch repeatedly. When Finnley arrived to open the shop, she found the doors already unlocked, the lights on low. "Hello," she called, cautiously stepping inside. Carter checked his watch one last time. "You're right on time," he said, standing to greet her. "What's all this?" Finnley asked, looking around at the transformed space. Candles flickered on every table, and a path of coffee beans led from the door to where he stood. "1 year ago today, I was having the worst morning of my life," Carter began, taking her hands as she reached him. "I had been waiting forever. I was frustrated, impatient, and then this beautiful woman brought me coffee without asking for anything in return." Finnley smiled, tears already forming in her eyes. "The coffee karma policy." "It was more than coffee," Carter continued. "It was kindness. It was the beginning of me remembering how to be human again, not just a CEO." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "That day changed my life, but every day with you since then has only confirmed what I already knew then. You are extraordinary, Finnley Ross." Dropping to one knee, Carter opened the box to reveal a vintage emerald ring. "My grandmother gave this to me before she died, told me to save it for someone special," he explained. "Someone who would see me, not just what I could provide. I've found that person in you." Finnley was openly crying now, her hands trembling in his. "Finnley Ross, will you marry me?" Carter asked, his own voice unsteady with emotion. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course I will." As Carter slid the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss his fiancée, he thought about all the meetings he'd attended, all the deals he'd closed, all the successes he'd achieved. None of them compared to this moment, this perfect culmination of a love that had begun with a simple cup of coffee and a stranger's kindness. Outside, the city was waking up. Soon, the Roasted Bean would open its doors to the usual crowd of students, professionals, and neighbors. But for now, in this quiet moment before the day began, Carter and Finnley held each other close, savoring the sweetness of a future they would build together one cup of coffee at a time.